This video is another in the series of the basic workflow for OpenStudio 0.6. The first video, or the video before this, we picked a building type specific template and we assigned or recreated the envelope to go with that. Now we're going to look at the activities that go in the different spaces, as well as the thermal zoning, assigning thermostats, and then looking at the weather file. So for this, I'm going to switch into one of our new render modes, which is render by space type. This is new from OpenStudio 0.5 and later. And you can see that everything is blue. And that is because at the building level for each template, we have a default space type. So in a school, it's going to be a classroom. In an office, it's just office. In a hotel, it happens to be a guest room. So I'm going to take some of these other spaces and change the space type. And I'm going to use the space attributes tool to do that. And I'm going to set it to a corridor for the same vintage. And when I do that, you'll see that the colors will change. The templates have different colors associated with the space types, and you can change those in the render by construction, space type, thermal zone, and story. The user can set colors, and those colors will be maintained in their OSM file. In our templates, we've just preset some colors where cooler colors tend to be more private or hazardous areas, and warmer colors are more public or areas of assembly. And you can customize those to match your firm's standards for colors that you have for different space types. So I'm going to take this one up here, and I'm going to set that to be a banquet area. Now, if I'm not selecting multiple spaces at once, I have another option for tools, and I'm going to minimize this a bit here, and I'm going to open up my OpenStudio inspector. When I select a space in SketchUp, it selects the space in the inspector, and also if I select a space in the inspector, it'll highlight that same space in SketchUp. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to pick a space type, and I'm going to set this to be a lobby space. And then I'll close our inspector just so we can get a bigger SketchUp window. So now I've done what I need with the space types. As I assign those space types, I'm changing the number of people that are in those spaces and the schedule those people are in those spaces. So is it all day long? Is it during certain hours of the day? What kind of lighting power density occurs there? What kind of equipment is in there? What kind of outdoor air requirements are needed? So all this is changing just by reassigning space types. Now we're not ready to run the simulation yet because we don't have thermal zones. There is an option to go to Plugins, Preferences, and create new thermal zone for each space. If you want to work like you were in Energy Plus and have a one-to-one mapping of spaces to thermal zones, you can check this and it'll make the thermal zones for you. But one of the benefits of OpenStudio is that you can work with spaces in an architectural way without having to worry about thermal zones yet. And then as you get further and you get ready to run a simulation, you start to think about what spaces would go together well to make a thermal zone. And so in this case, I'm going to pick these two guest rooms on the top floor, and I'm going to use the same tool we've been using before, but this time I'm going to choose the new thermal zone. And so it will make a thermal zone of those two spaces. And I'm going to do the same thing below. And I know that may not necessarily be appropriate in this case, but it's just for a demonstration here. So I can choose the thermal zone I already have, but I still want to go make a new one. Now, it's also worth noting that I can take two different spaces that have different types. The corridor, if I go back here, I have a corridor and a banquet area. And maybe I want those to be part of the same thermal zone. So I can do the same thing again. Now, I won't notice that change right now because I'm in the wrong render mode. But when I switch back to render by thermal zone, I'll see that. And if you have a bunch of other spaces that you do just want to do a one-to-one mapping and you don't want to manually create those thermal zones, we have a script when you go to OpenStudio user scripts, and it says assign unique zones to untagged spaces. So this will run through the rest of the model and create thermal zones and assign those spaces to them. These colors were kind of oddly assigned, and we need to improve upon our random color assignments to not be so random. So what's happening here is one, there's no color, and two, it's also very dark. So I'm just going to adjust that, and that will be remembered. Oh, it looks too much like what we have. There we go. And then I'll pick this one here, and let's make that one kind of red. And so now we have some nice looking colors, and that will be saved the next time we reopen the model. So I'm almost ready to run the simulation. There's just a few more things to do. Thermostats. So just to keep this simple, I'm going to select all these spaces. And thermostats, I should point out, go to thermal zones, but since we don't have a way in SketchUp to directly select multiple thermal zones, I can actually select spaces and then set the thermostat to any parent thermal zones of those. And to keep it simple here, I'm going to set the large hotel thermostat across the board, But we do have multiple thermostats in our template for different types of spaces, which sets different cooling and heating set points and different schedules for them as well. And if I wanted to do ideal air loads, I could have set ideal air loads there as well. Um, and you can again go back to the inspector and select thermal zones, and you can check to see that. We'll just make this bigger. That I do have a thermostat assigned, and if you wanted to change it, you could change it to another one or clear out the value altogether. So the last thing I'm going to do is choose a weather file. Now on Energy Plus IDF files, there is no weather file. And in an OpenStudio file, we don't actually store the weather data, but what we do store is a path to the weather file. So I'm going to go and choose Golden here. And this is telling me I have not set the location of my file yet, and it gives me the option to set it to the weather file, which I'm going to do. You can also use SketchUp's geolocation to do that. I'm also going to go here and load in some design days, which will be important since I'm using a full mechanical system. I also want to check zone sizing. So I'm going to click apply. I'm not going to run the simulation yet, and I'm just going to close this, and I'm going to save this file. And I already saved it earlier, so I'm going to call this one 02, and I'll call it activity. And we're going to save that now. And that's really all there is for this video. I'm going to jump into System Outliner in the next video and add the mechanical system.